Hi, this is Mallory Redding, and this is my case study presentation. The student that I worked with this semester is Kamora McLean. She's a 6-year-old first grader, and she's a wonderful student. She has a willingness to learn and really does enjoy being challenged academically. She is reading on grade level, but she does need enrichment activities to challenge and sharpen her reading. She has a very high vocabulary. Her mother does work with her at home, and she reads above level books to her. She also receives tutoring outside of school in addition to the services that I provided for her this semester for this course. She does need work on articulating her thoughts and extending her thinking beyond the surface level of the stories she reads. And she can work on becoming more fluent in her reading. She is reading on grade level. Her phonics skills and phonemic awareness skills are very good. She does understand all of the first grade phonics concepts, from short A to silent E to inflectional endings. Inflectional endings is actually something that she can continue to work on. But I have noticed her frustration when it comes to writing. She's a very creative child, and I do believe that if she enjoyed writing for leisure, that could spill over into her academic life. I believe this child really does need a lot of practice when it comes to writing. But she's a normal child. She's very creative. She enjoys dancing, spending time with family, playing outside. Our favorite movie is Frozen. But she's absolutely a wonderful student. She really does try. She has received the Star Student Award at school. So these are her assessment results. I wanted to identify the 3 main areas that I wanted to work with her this semester. The first area is fluency, and as you can see right here, the instrument that I use is from the QRI-5, the primer section for elementary students. The passage that I used was called A Trip, and it was the very first passage in the book in the primer section. She had a total of 6 miscues. Her rate was 79.33 words per minute. The words correct was 75. Based on her phonics and phonemic awareness level, I began with the primer. I used my good teacher judgment to determine where she belonged in the QRI-5 book. Because her phonics level was so high, I immediately passed the pre-primer level of stories. I knew that would be too low for her. She did show that she could improve her fluency when she did read the story A Trip. She seemed to have trouble at this time in the semester with words with inflectional endings, and even now, after the semester has passed, pretty much, she still does need practice with inflectional endings. By the end of the year, with that same story, she had a total number of 2 miscues. Her rate was 119 words per minute, and she read 117 words correctly. She shows significant changes in her fluency rate. Her practice with inflectional endings and explicit fluency practice with reading poems and short stories has increased her correct words per minute and rate. However, like I previously stated, she can get more practice with inflectional endings. The next section right here is comprehension, and the assessment instrument that I use is from the QRI-5, the primer level, and I use the same story for the beginning of the year. However, I used a different story for the post-test. I used the passage, The Pig Who Learned to Read, and it's a couple stories after the A Trip story. The total number correct on her pretest was 4 out of 4 from the explicit questions. And for the implicit questions, the questions with answers that are not found directly in the text, she only got 1 correct out of 2. She did seem a little confused at this time. I was happy to know that she could recall the events, but I immediately knew that she did need more practice answering questions when inferencing is required. A deeper understanding into the text is where I knew I wanted to go with her. Now, by the end of the year, she answered 4 out of the 4 explicit questions correctly, and she answered both implicit questions correctly. So I was very proud of her on that. She has improved a lot with her implicit answering. I really try to dig very deep with her and get her thinking beyond what is written explicitly in the text. And with the practice that we had in our tutoring sessions, in conjunction with what she was getting at school during small group, she showed to be very successful, and she showed a lot of academic gains there. The next session that I wanted to work with her with is her writing skills. She did show frustration at the beginning of the year when asked to write a nonfiction assessment prompt called Insects. And basically it was just a quick prompt that came with a rubric that I found online. And her writing has shown to be at grade level in the beginning of the school year. A lot of the first graders come in and they're unsure of how to spell certain words correctly. Their sentences may not make very much sense. They may have spacing issues. They forget about capitalization and punctuation. So that is where her writing was at the beginning of the school year. I did notice a lot of her writing in her school notebook where she drew pictures instead of writing. So I can tell that that was definitely a deficit that I wanted to embed in our lessons without making it very frustrating for her. I wanted her to enjoy our sessions and get as much out of it as she could, but still work on her writing as well. By the end of this semester, her writing has not improved a whole lot. She does still show frustration when she's writing, but luckily she is a little bit interested in writing for fun and completing graphic organizers. I used a lot of graphic organizers this semester with her to get her thoughts organized and to dig deeper into the text. So she had several opportunities with me to practice those writing skills. So her literacy goals was, the first one was, students should be able to ask and answer explicit and implicit questions based on a selected first grade on-level reading passage. I wanted to make sure that she was able to master those first grade on-level reading passages. Her second literacy goal was to be able to summarize a reading passage, including a detailed recall of all characters, settings, and main events. I wanted her to be able to recall these events and summarize what she just read. No matter how long it took her to read it, I wanted her to be able to quickly wrap it up and restate it to me what she read. Her third literacy goal was to be able to complete a graphic organizer independently. I used a lot of modeling with graphic organizers this semester with her, and I did expect her by the end of the year to be able to read a text or have a text read to her, have a graphic organizer quickly explained if it was unfamiliar to her, and complete it. What you're getting ready to see is a snippet of the recorded tutoring session. It was from my lesson plan number 2. And what I had was a 5W chart. And this 5W chart, it had questions: who, what, when, where, and why. And we quickly went over it. So you're going to see a little bit of this tutoring session. This was the second tutoring session that we had. Alright, so just to sum up what you just saw, we read a story called At the Pumpkin Farm, and it was a read work story on a first grade level. And we went over the story. I read the story to her, and we went over the 5W chart. So that's what you just saw, the end of that. We had completed a few of the 5Ws before this portion of the video. So overall, this case study, there was a lot of things that worked. I really enjoyed having all of my lesson planning done ahead of time. It just kept me prepared. It kept me on track with what I wanted Kamora's learning goals to be. And I liked being able to break down the same strategy into different activities. I had a lesson plan where we talked about text-to-text connections. I had another lesson plan where we talked about text-to-world connections, and another one, text-to-self connections. It was the same strategy of making connections, but it was broken down into different aspects. Also, I like that the lesson plans align with what she was doing in school. She's a first grader, and I teach first grade, so I knew at what point in the semester she was doing what. So that's what was a benefit for her. There were things that did not work. I did not include explicit vocabulary instruction in every single session, and I wish that I did. She has such a wonderful vocabulary for a first grader right now, and I wanted to really build and enrich her on that. So I wish that I had did that more. Also, I had a lot of low-level passages. When I think about it, the passages that I prepared for her, I could have gotten more challenging passages. I should have been using second grade passages more often. I also noticed that some of the passages she read before, because they're passages that I did receive from the Journeys curriculum that we use here in Orange County, Orlando. Her teacher would use those same passages sometimes, so that's where I started to have to pull from ReadWorks and other resources like that. What I should have done, instead of focusing on one comprehension, one strategy, I wish that I would have broken it down and given her just a little bit of each of the things that she needed in each session. So, for example, I should have started with a vocabulary strategy lesson, started with synonyms or antonyms or something like that, and read a story to her to discuss reading comprehension strategies. I should have had a timed fluency passage each and every session, and then I should have ended every session with a writing prompt so she would get that writing element as well. Here were my recommendations for Mom, and these recommendations are for the teacher as well. So I really hope you guys enjoyed my presentation.